A single mistake inside a courthouse was all it took to put a price on her life. She wasn't a witness. She wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't even part of the investigation. She was just the quiet court clerk who stamped documents. Nobody else bothered to read. But on one ordinary morning, she noticed one page hidden inside a murder case file, a page that should never have existed. She looked up for only a second and locked eyes with the most feared Mafia boss in the city. He didn't threaten her. He didn't run. He simply smiled. 3 days later, half the people connected to that file were dead, and the only person still alive was the woman who wasn't supposed to know anything. The question wasn't why the Mafia wanted her. The real question was, why was the most dangerous man in the city willing to start a war just to keep one ordinary court clerk alive? Stay with me, because this story only gets darker from here. Everyone in the courthouse knew Emma Carter, not because she was important, but because she was invisible. She arrived before sunrise every morning carrying the same worn leather bag. She organized files, stamped paperwork, corrected mistakes no one noticed. By lunchtime, most judges had already forgotten she existed. That was exactly how Emma liked it. After losing both parents in a car accident 6 years earlier, quiet had become her safest place. No drama, no attention, no risks, just enough overtime to pay rent and help her younger brother finish college. She believed ordinary people survived by staying unnoticed. She had no idea that belief was about to destroy her life. Across the city, another name carried a very different reputation. Adrian Moretti. People never said his name loudly. Business owners lowered their voices whenever he walked by. Police officers pretended not to recognize him. Politicians smiled for cameras, then secretly accepted his phone calls after midnight. Officially, Adrian owned hotels, shipping companies, and luxury restaurants. Unofficially, everyone knew he controlled nearly every criminal network in the city. Yet despite hundreds of investigations, no court had ever convicted him. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses vanished. Cases collapsed. Some called him a monster. Others called him a genius. Nobody truly knew the man behind the headlines. Until one rainy Tuesday morning, his newest trial began. Security inside the courthouse doubled. Metal detectors beeped nonstop. Armed officers stood in every hallway. Reporters crowded outside, hoping history would finally change. Emma barely looked up. To her, it was just another case file. Another stack of paperwork. Another long day. She carried several folders toward courtroom 7. One file slipped from the stack. Papers scattered across the marble floor. She sighed, knelt down, and began collecting them. That's when she noticed something strange. Every page carried official court markings. Except one. The paper felt newer. Different. There was no registration stamp. No filing code. It shouldn't have been there. Curiosity got the better of her. She unfolded it. At first, it looked like an ordinary financial report. Then she noticed several handwritten names. Judges, police commanders, government officials, each beside enormous payment amounts. Near the bottom, one final signature. Adrian Moretti. Emma's heart stopped. Before she could react, a shadow appeared beside her. She slowly raised her eyes. Standing only a few feet away, surrounded by armed security, was Adrian himself. He looked directly at the page in her trembling hands. Then, instead of panic, instead of anger, he gave her the smallest smile, almost as if he'd been expecting this moment all along. Emma quickly shoved the paper back into the folder. She apologized, collected the remaining documents, and hurried into the courtroom. But something felt terribly wrong, because when she counted the pages again, the mysterious document had disappeared. She searched every folder twice. Nothing. It had simply vanished. No one else seemed to notice. No one asked questions. No one mentioned it. Except, when Emma returned to her desk later that afternoon, she found a single white rose waiting beside her computer. No card. No name. Just one sentence typed on a tiny piece of paper. Some truths are safer when forgotten. Emma looked around the office. Everyone continued working. Nobody appeared interested. Nobody seemed to have left the flower. But across the street, through the courthouse window, a black luxury sedan remained parked. Inside, someone was watching her. And Emma had no idea that before sunrise tomorrow, someone would break into her apartment, not to steal anything, but to make sure she never spoke about the page she was never supposed to see. Emma didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside her apartment felt louder than it should have. The humming refrigerator, the rain tapping against the windows. Even the old pipes inside the building seemed to whisper warnings she couldn't understand. She checked the lock on her front door 3 times, pulled the curtains shut, turned off every light except the small lamp beside her couch. She kept telling herself the white rose was probably some cruel prank. The missing document? Just a filing mistake. The black sedan outside the courthouse. A coincidence. But deep inside, she already knew she was lying to herself. At exactly 2:17 in the morning, the power went out. The apartment fell into complete darkness. Emma froze. The silence was somehow worse than the noise. Then, she heard it. A slow metallic click. Someone was unlocking her front door. Not forcing it. Unlocking it. As if they already had a key. Emma's heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. She grabbed the first thing she could reach, a heavy glass vase from the coffee table, and backed into the hallway. The door opened. 1 inch. Then 2. A narrow beam of flashlight swept across the room. A gloved hand appeared. Another followed. Whoever had entered wasn't searching for valuables. They walked straight toward the small desk where Emma kept her work bag, as if they knew exactly what they had come for. Emma held her breath. The stranger unzipped her bag, pulled out the courthouse folders, flipped through every page, growing faster, more aggressive. Then, a low voice broke the silence. "She's not here." Another voice answered from the doorway. "Find her." Emma felt her legs weaken. There wasn't just one intruder. There were at least 3. She slowly stepped backward and accidentally bumped into the hallway mirror. The frame rattled. The noise echoed through the apartment. Everything stopped. The flashlights turned toward her. For one terrifying second, nobody moved. Then all 3 men charged. Emma ran, barefoot, still clutching the glass vase. She slammed the bedroom door behind her, locked it. The wood shook instantly under the first kick. Another impact. The hinges groaned. A third kick splintered the frame. Emma looked around desperately. No fire escape. No balcony. Only one window overlooking 4 stories of empty air. Tears filled her eyes. There was nowhere left to run. The bedroom door burst open. One masked man stepped inside. Then another. The first raised a silenced pistol. Emma closed her eyes. She truly believed this was the end. Then, 3 deafening shots exploded through the apartment. Not from the intruders. From somewhere behind them. The masked men collapsed almost instantly. A 4th figure entered through the destroyed doorway. Tall, calm, perfectly dressed in a charcoal suit despite the rain outside. He lowered the pistol without saying a word. Adrian Moretti. For a long moment, he simply looked at Emma. His expression revealed nothing. Not relief. Not anger. Not fear. Only calculation. He glanced toward one of the dying attackers. The man struggled to breathe. Adrian crouched beside him. "There were 4 of you," he said quietly. "So where's the last one?" The attacker smiled through blood. "You've already lost." Before anyone could stop him, he bit down on something hidden inside his mouth. Within seconds, he stopped moving. Poison. Adrian's face hardened. That tiny detail told him everything. These weren't ordinary killers. Professionals. Men trained never to be captured alive. He stood and looked back at Emma. "The people hunting you don't work for me." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "If not you," she whispered inside her own mind. "Then who?" Adrian seemed to read the question without hearing it. "They're cleaning up someone else's mistake." Sirens echoed somewhere in the distance. Someone in the building had finally called the police. Adrian checked his watch. "We have less than 3 minutes." Emma didn't move. "I am not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice. I'd rather trust the police." He looked toward the lifeless bodies on her bedroom floor. "The police already gave them your address." Emma felt every bit of strength leave her body. How? How could anyone inside the police know where she lived? How many people were involved? How far did this conspiracy reach? Adrian extended his hand. "If you stay, they'll send more. If you leave with me," Emma said. "How do I know you won't kill me yourself?" For the first time, something unexpected crossed Adrian's face. Sadness. "Just for a second. If I wanted you dead," he said quietly, "I would have arrived 5 minutes later." Those words echoed inside Emma's mind. She hated how much sense they made. Outside, more sirens approached. Adrian's security team entered through the shattered doorway. They worked with astonishing precision. Weapons disappeared. Bullet casings vanished. Within seconds, It looked as though they had rehearsed the scene 100 times. One of the guards approached Adrian. "They're coming." Adrian nodded. He looked back at Emma. "This is the last ordinary moment you'll ever have." She hesitated. Then, with trembling hands, she picked up her worn leather bag, the same bag she had carried to work every morning for 6 years. Only now, it no longer held an ordinary life. Minutes later, a convoy of black vehicles disappeared into the rain while police cars rushed toward the apartment. Building from the opposite direction, Emma watched the city through the tinted window. Every familiar street slowly faded behind them. Nobody inside the vehicle spoke. Nobody answered her questions. Nearly 2 hours later, the convoy stopped in front of a massive estate, hidden deep within a forest outside the city. Emma expected a fortress. Instead, she found something strangely peaceful. A stone mansion surrounded by gardens. An old fountain, birdsong replacing traffic. It didn't look like the home of the city's most feared mafia boss. It looked like somewhere forgotten by time. A housekeeper welcomed her as though she were an honored guest. Fresh clothes had already been prepared. A room overlooking the lake was waiting. Nothing about it made sense. Why would a man with Adrian's reputation treat her with such unexpected care? Later that evening, unable to calm her thoughts, Emma wandered through the quiet halls. She eventually found a small library. Thousands of books lined the walls. Family photographs rested on wooden shelves. One frame caught her attention immediately. She stepped closer, then stopped breathing. It was an old photograph taken nearly 25 years earlier. A much younger Adrian stood beside a smiling man, his arm resting comfortably across the man's shoulder. Emma's hands began to shake. She recognized that face instantly. It was her father. The father Adrian had claimed never to know. The father who had died believing he had lived an ordinary life. Emma slowly lifted the photograph from the shelf. Behind her, a floorboard creaked. She turned around. Adrian stood in the doorway. His expression was no longer unreadable. For the first time since this nightmare began, the most feared man in the city looked like someone carrying a burden he had hidden for decades. And Emma realized everything she believed about her family was built on a lie. Emma couldn't take her eyes off the photograph. Her fingers tightened around the wooden frame. The smiling man beside Adrian wasn't someone who merely looked like her father. It was him. The same gentle smile. The same old wristwatch he wore every single day. Even the small scar above his left eyebrow, the one Emma remembered asking about as a little girl. There was no mistake. Her father had known Adrian Moretti. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavier than any argument. Finally, Adrian walked toward her and carefully took the photograph from her hands. "I wondered how long it would take before you found this." Emma stared at him. "You lied to me. I kept something from you." "That's the same thing." "No," Adrian replied quietly. "A lie hides the truth to protect yourself. I hid the truth to protect you." Emma laughed bitterly. "Protect me?" She pointed toward the shattered memories racing through her mind. "My apartment was invaded. People tried to kill me. I've been dragged into the middle of a war I don't even understand. And you're telling me this is protection?" Adrian didn't argue. He simply placed the photograph back onto the shelf. "Your father saved my life." Emma froze. "What?" "It was 23 years ago. I wasn't the man the newspapers write about today. I had inherited a criminal empire that was already falling apart. My own people wanted me dead." Emma wanted to interrupt. She wanted to accuse him of inventing another story. But something in his voice stopped her. It wasn't pride. It wasn't an excuse. It sounded like regret. "There was an explosion at the old harbor," Adrian continued. "My convoy was ambushed. My bodyguards were killed. I was shot twice. I crawled into an abandoned warehouse believing I wouldn't survive the night." He paused. "Then your father found me." Emma frowned. "My father was an accountant." Adrian nodded. "That's what everyone believed." He looked directly at her. "But before he became an accountant, he worked for the government's organized crime division." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "No, he was undercover." The word struck Emma harder than any bullet could have. Every childhood memory suddenly felt uncertain. The late-night phone calls, the unexplained business trips, the locked drawer in his office, the constant reminders never to tell strangers where they lived. She had always assumed her father was simply cautious. Now, everything looked different. "He was investigating my organization," Adrian said. "He had every reason to arrest me. So why didn't he?" Because he realized someone inside the government was helping my enemies. Emma struggled to process what she was hearing. My father protected a mafia boss. He protected an innocent man from becoming the wrong man's victim. Adrian's eyes darkened. He believed I could still choose what kind of man I wanted to become. Emma looked away. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect anything. The room fell silent once again. Before Emma could ask another question, one of Adrian's security men rushed into the library. His usually calm expression had disappeared. We have a problem. Adrian turned immediately. What happened? The judge. Adrian's face hardened. What about him? He's dead. Emma felt cold. The same judge who was assigned to your trial? The guard nodded. They found him in his home an hour ago. No signs of forced entry. No witnesses. No evidence. Adrian closed his eyes for a brief moment. They're moving faster than I expected. Emma stepped closer. Who's they? Before Adrian could answer, another guard entered. This one looked even more alarmed. We intercepted a message. Everyone in the room became silent. The guard swallowed. They're calling the operation Black Verdict. Emma had never heard the name before. Adrian clearly had. Every trace of color disappeared from his face. For the first time, the man everyone feared looked genuinely afraid. Emma noticed it immediately. What is Black Verdict? Adrian answered without looking at her. It isn't an operation. It's a promise. He slowly walked toward one of the windows overlooking the lake. When powerful people fear exposure, they erase everyone connected to the truth. Emma felt a chill run through her entire body. The missing document was only the beginning. Adrian nodded. The page you found wasn't evidence. It was bait. Bait. They wanted someone inside the courthouse to notice it. Emma frowned. But why? So they could identify every honest person left inside the system. Emma's breathing became shallow. You mean, you weren't supposed to read the document. But the moment you did, someone marked you for death. The realization hit her like a freight train. She hadn't been hunted because of what she knew. She was being hunted because she had proven she couldn't be controlled. Before anyone could say another word, every light inside the mansion suddenly went dark. The emergency alarms exploded to life. Red lights flashed through every hallway. One of the guards pressed his hand against his earpiece. Then his eyes widened. They've breached the outer gate. Gunfire echoed somewhere outside. Then another burst. Then another. Emma jumped. The peaceful estate transformed into a battlefield within seconds. Security teams rushed through the corridors. Weapons appeared from hidden compartments inside the walls. Bulletproof doors slammed shut automatically. Adrian remained perfectly calm. They found us. He turned toward Emma. You stay behind me. I'm not leaving you alone. She looked at him in disbelief. You still think I'm afraid of you, aren't you? Emma hesitated. She should have been. Everything about Adrian represented danger. But the men attacking the mansion weren't trying to capture her. They were trying to erase her. There was a difference. Outside, explosions shook the ground. Smoke rose above the trees. One of Adrian's men burst through the doorway, bleeding heavily from his shoulder. They're using military weapons. Another explosion shattered several windows. Glass rained across the marble floor. Emma instinctively ducked. Adrian pulled her behind a stone pillar just as bullets tore through the library. The attackers weren't firing wildly. They knew exactly where they were aiming. They have blueprints, Adrian muttered. Someone inside his organization had betrayed him. At that exact moment, a voice crackled through the mansion's security speakers. Slow, calm, mocking. Adrian, you've protected the girl long enough. Hand her over, and maybe I'll let a few of your people survive. Emma looked toward Adrian. His expression turned to stone. He recognized the voice. More importantly, he hadn't expected to hear it. Very quietly, almost to himself, he whispered a name. Marco. Emma frowned. Marco wasn't just another enemy. Judging by Adrian's face, Marco was someone he had once trusted with his life. And now, that same man had brought an army to kill the one woman Adrian had sworn to protect. Emma still didn't know why Adrian was risking everything for her. But one thing had become painfully clear. This wasn't simply a fight between rival mafia families anymore. This was a betrayal decades in the making. And before the night was over, someone they both loved would pay the price. The first explosion hit the east wing. The blast shook the entire mansion. Dust rained from the ceiling. Books toppled from shelves. The antique chandelier above the library shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. Emma instinctively covered her head. Adrian grabbed her arm before she could lose her balance. Stay close. His voice remained calm. Too calm. The kind of calm only someone accustomed to chaos could possess. Outside, automatic gunfire echoed across the estate. It came in controlled bursts. Disciplined. Professional. These weren't reckless gangsters. Whoever Marco had brought with him had military training. Adrian's security chief, Victor, rushed into the library. Blood stained the sleeve of his black suit. They've taken the north gate. How many? At least 30. And the police? Victor gave a bitter smile. They're not coming. Emma's stomach dropped. Of course they weren't. If Adrian was telling the truth. This conspiracy reached far beyond the criminal world. The people sworn to protect the city had already chosen a side. Another explosion thundered through the mansion. This one much closer. Smoke drifted beneath the library doors. Victor looked at Adrian. We can't hold this place. Adrian nodded once. Prepare the tunnel. Emma frowned. What tunnel? Neither man answered. The floor beneath the fireplace suddenly rumbled. A section of polished stone slowly slid aside, revealing a narrow staircase disappearing into darkness. Without hesitation, Adrian turned toward Emma. This passage leads outside the estate. She stared at him. And you? I'm staying. No. You have to leave. I'm not leaving you. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. For the first time, the wall around his emotions began to crack. If they capture me. I know. If they capture you. He stopped himself. Emma noticed. He couldn't even finish the sentence. Because the outcome was too terrible to say aloud. Victor interrupted. We're out of time. Gunfire erupted just outside the library doors. The attackers had reached the hallway. Adrian gently placed something into Emma's hand. A small silver key. Old. Worn smooth by time. My office. The bottom drawer. Don't open it unless. He paused. Unless I don't come back. Emma looked at the key. Then back at him. You keep acting like you're saying goodbye. He forced the faintest smile. I've learned never to promise tomorrow. The library doors exploded inward. Several armed men stormed inside. Victor opened fire immediately. The room became deafening. Adrian pushed Emma toward the hidden staircase. Go. She hesitated. 1 second. 2. Then another explosion knocked her down the first few steps. The stone door slammed shut above her. Darkness swallowed everything. Only the distant sound of gunfire remained. Emma stumbled through the underground tunnel. Every instinct told her to turn back. But Adrian had ordered her to keep moving. She hated herself for obeying. Minutes later, she emerged inside an abandoned boathouse nearly half a mile from the mansion. Cold night air filled her lungs. She looked back toward the estate. Flames climbed into the sky. The peaceful home she had seen only hours earlier had become an inferno. Headlights suddenly illuminated the boathouse. A black SUV pulled to a stop. Emma stepped backward. The driver's door opened. A familiar face climbed out. She blinked in disbelief. Daniel. Her younger brother smiled with visible relief. There you are. Emma ran toward him. What are you doing here? I came to get you. How did you know where I was? Daniel hesitated. Only for a fraction of a second. Too quickly for most people to notice. But Emma noticed. I received a message. From who? Someone who said you were in danger. Emma didn't have time to question it. Behind them, another explosion lit the night sky. Daniel grabbed her hand. We have to leave. She climbed into the SUV. The vehicle sped away from the burning estate. For nearly 20 minutes, neither of them spoke. Emma stared through the passenger window. She couldn't stop thinking about Adrian. Was he alive? Had he escaped? Or had she just watched the only man trying to protect her die inside that mansion? Daniel finally broke the silence. I'm sorry. Emma looked at him. For what? He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. For lying to you. Her heartbeat quickened. The SUV slowed. Not because of traffic. Because several black vehicles suddenly surrounded them. Emma's eyes widened. Armed men stepped out from every direction. Daniel calmly switched off the engine. What are you doing? He wouldn't look at her. I'm sorry, Emma. The passenger door was yanked open. Strong hands pulled her from the vehicle. She struggled, kicked, screamed. But there were too many of them. Daniel remained seated behind the wheel. His head hung low. He still couldn't meet her eyes. One of the armed men removed his mask. A man in his 50s. Silver hair. Cold blue eyes. A confident smile. So, he said softly, this is the girl Adrian has sacrificed everything to protect. Emma glared at him. Who are you? The man chuckled. An old friend. My name is Marco. Emma immediately recognized it. The voice from the mansion speakers. The man who had betrayed Adrian. Marco studied her carefully. You expected someone extraordinary. He smiled. Instead, you're simply a frightened court clerk. He stepped closer. And yet, Adrian burned half his empire tonight just to save you. Emma's breathing quickened. What do you want? Marco's smile disappeared. I want something Adrian stole from me 23 years ago. He looked toward Daniel. You've done well. Daniel slowly climbed out of the SUV. His face was pale. I kept my part of the deal. You promised my sister wouldn't be harmed. Marco laughed. My dear boy, I promised I'd consider it. Daniel's expression changed instantly. You said, I know exactly what I said. Before Daniel could react, one of Marco's men struck him across the head with a rifle. He collapsed onto the pavement. Emma screamed. Stop. Marco didn't even glance at Daniel. You see, Emma, loyalty is useful, but only until it isn't. He turned back toward her. Your brother believed he was working to protect you. He never realized he was delivering you to me. Emma's world collapsed. Daniel hadn't betrayed her out of greed. He'd been manipulated, used, just like she had. Marco leaned close enough for only Emma to hear. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to make Adrian choose. You or his entire organization. Emma swallowed hard. And if he refuses? Marco smiled. Oh, he won't. Because Adrian Moretti has one weakness. You. Far away, beyond the hills, another explosion echoed through the night. Emma closed her eyes. She had no idea whether Adrian was still alive. But if he was, she already knew exactly what he would do. He would come for her, even if it meant walking straight into the trap. Marco had spent 23 years preparing. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Emma realized the most dangerous person in this story wasn't Adrian. It never had been. It was the man who understood exactly how to use love as a weapon. Morning arrived beneath a gray, unforgiving sky. Emma had no idea where Marco was holding her. The windows of the old warehouse had been painted black. Heavy steel doors sealed every exit. Outside, she could hear the distant cries of seagulls. Somewhere near the harbor. The same harbor Adrian had mentioned the night her father saved his life. It couldn't be a coincidence. Marco wanted history to repeat itself. Only this time, he intended to finish what had begun 23 years earlier. Emma sat alone in a small room, her wrists tied to a wooden chair. Hours passed. No food. No questions. Only silence. Then the door creaked open. Daniel stepped inside. His forehead was bandaged. His hands trembled. For several seconds, he couldn't bring himself to look at his sister. I'm sorry. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I know. No, you don't. His voice broke. I thought I was helping you. They told me Adrian was the reason Mom and Dad died. They said if I helped them find you, they'd finally expose him. Emma searched her brother's face. All she saw was guilt, not betrayal. Just a young man who had been manipulated by people far more powerful than himself. They lied to you, she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. I know that now. He reached into his pocket and produced a small flash drive. I found this in Marco's office. I think it's what everyone's been killing for. Emma frowned. The missing evidence. Daniel nodded. It contains financial records, recordings, and names. The judges. The politicians. The police commanders. Everyone. Emma stared at the tiny device. All those lives destroyed. Because of something that could fit in the palm of her hand. Before either of them could speak again, the warehouse doors thundered open. Marco entered, flanked by dozens of armed men. He smiled the moment he saw Daniel standing beside Emma. I was wondering how long it would take. Daniel instinctively stepped in front of his sister. Marco chuckled. Too late to become a hero. He snapped his fingers. Two guards seized Daniel and forced him to his knees. Marco turned toward Emma. Your father made the same mistake. Emma's heart pounded. What do you mean? Marco's expression grew colder. Your father discovered who was truly controlling the city. He gathered enough evidence to destroy us all. So we offered him a choice. Emma already knew she wasn't going to like the answer. He refused. Marco smiled without warmth. The car accident wasn't an accident. The world seemed to stop. Emma couldn't breathe. Every memory of that rainy night, every funeral, every unanswered question, collapsed into one unbearable truth. Marco had murdered her parents. Not because they were innocent, but because they refused to become corrupt. Tears streamed down Emma's face. Marco watched without emotion. Now you understand. Your family has always been a problem. A loud explosion suddenly shook the building. Everyone turned. Another blast followed. This one closer. The warehouse lights flickered. One of Marco's guards rushed in. They're here. Marco smiled. Right on time. Gunfire erupted outside. The sound grew louder by the second. Marco calmly straightened his jacket. I've waited 23 years for this reunion. The massive warehouse doors burst inward. Smoke rolled across the concrete floor. Silhouettes emerged through the haze. Adrian walked at the front. His suit was torn, his face bruised, a bandage wrapped around his shoulder. But his eyes never left Emma. He had come, just as she knew he would. Marco laughed. I knew love would make you predictable. Adrian stopped several yards away. You wanted me. I'm here. Let them go. Marco slowly shook his head. No, I want everything. Your empire, your loyalty, your life. Adrian reached inside his coat. Every weapon in the warehouse immediately pointed toward him. Instead of drawing a gun, he removed a folded document. He dropped it onto the floor. Every business, every account, every shipment. It's all yours. Emma stared in disbelief. Adrian was surrendering everything he had built. Marco grinned. I knew you'd choose her, but you misunderstood. I never intended to keep my promise. He raised his pistol toward Emma. Everything happened at once. Daniel broke free from the guards. He threw himself between Marco and his sister. The gun fired. The bullet struck Daniel in the chest. Emma screamed. Adrian moved instantly. Gunfire exploded throughout the warehouse. Marco's men returned fire. Within seconds, the building became complete chaos. Emma crawled toward Daniel. He collapsed into her arms. Blood spread across his shirt. I'm sorry, he whispered. So sorry. Emma held him tightly. You don't have to apologize. I should have trusted you. Daniel gave the faintest smile. Tell Mom. He stopped himself. A sad laugh escaped his lips. I forgot. Fresh tears rolled down Emma's face. I know. I'll miss them too. Daniel looked toward Adrian. Protect her. Then, his eyes slowly closed. Emma cried out in heartbreak. Across the warehouse, Adrian fought his way toward Marco. The two men finally stood face to face. No bodyguards. No armies. Just the two survivors of a war that had lasted decades. Marco fired. Adrian dodged. The bullet shattered a steel beam. Adrian tackled Marco to the ground. The pistol slid across the floor. The two men struggled violently. Marco reached for a hidden knife. Before he could strike, Emma remembered the flash drive. She looked toward the control room overlooking the warehouse. Computers, security equipment, broadcast systems. Without thinking, she ran. Bullets struck the metal staircase behind her. She ignored them. Reaching the control room, she inserted the flash drive into the central computer. Rows of files appeared. Recorded conversations, bank transfers, murder orders, government officials accepting bribes. Every secret, every crime. She pressed one button. Upload. The system asked for confirmation. Emma didn't hesitate. Yes. Outside the warehouse, news agencies, federal investigators, and law enforcement, servers across the country began receiving thousands of encrypted files simultaneously. There was no stopping it now. The truth belonged to everyone. Below, Marco saw what she had done. His face twisted with panic. No. He lunged toward the staircase. Adrian intercepted him. The two men crashed through a broken railing. Marco lost his balance. For one terrifying moment, he hung above the harbor waters below. He reached desperately toward Adrian. Help me. Adrian looked into the eyes of the man who had destroyed countless lives, including Emma's family. Then he remembered something Emma's father had once told him. If you answer evil with more evil, it never ends. Adrian grabbed Marco's wrist, not to save a criminal, but to prove he would no longer become one. Sirens echoed across the harbor. Real sirens this time. Federal agents poured into the warehouse. Marco was pulled into custody. His empire ended not with revenge, but with justice. 6 months later, the city felt different. Corrupt judges had been arrested. Police commanders resigned in disgrace. Politicians who once believed themselves untouchable now stood before the same courts they had manipulated for years. Emma walked through the courthouse entrance once again. The same building, the same marble floors, the same echoing hallways. But she was no longer the invisible clerk carrying forgotten files. She had accepted a position as a legal investigator. helping uncover organized crime and government corruption. This time, she wasn't stamping paperwork. She was helping write a better future. As she stepped outside that evening, she noticed someone waiting near the courthouse gates. No convoy, no armed guards, no expensive suit, just a simple dark coat. Adrian. He held a single white rose, the same flower that had once arrived as a warning. Now it carried a different meaning, a promise that fear no longer controlled either of their lives. Emma walked toward him. The distance between them grew smaller with every step. Some stories begin with grand declarations. Theirs had begun with a misplaced page in a courtroom file. A tiny mistake that uncovered decades of lies, cost innocent lives, destroyed an empire built on corruption, and gave two broken people something they never expected to find. Not power, not revenge, but hope. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary love story begins with the most ordinary person. A woman everyone overlooked. A court clerk no one remembered, until the most feared mafia boss in the city fell hopelessly in love with her. And in loving her, he finally found the courage to become the man he had always been capable of being. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, remember this. Sometimes the smallest decision changes everything. You never know which ordinary moment might become the beginning of an unforgettable story.